Tonight, Governor Pritzker and Illinois lawmakers sound off on Indiana's push to lure the Bears over the state line. Plus, we get the lowdown on all the other business state lawmakers take up as they go back to work in the Capitol. And why an Edgewater group is trying to block the city from building new high-rises.
Former President and First Lady Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton is the former president, of course, front and center again, refusing to testify in front of Congress on an ongoing Jeffrey Epstein probe. The Clintons were summoned by the House Oversight Committee led by Kentucky Republican James Comer. The Clintons call the subpoena legally invalid and say they've already given what limited information they know. Comer said the Clintons' testimony is essential to their probe.
One reason I think most Americans want President Clinton to answer some questions is because he visited the White House. Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House 17 times while Bill Clinton was president. I've been in Congress 9 years. I think I've been to the White House 9 times in 9 years.
And that letter from the Clintons seems to dare the House to refer them to the DOJ for contempt of Congress. It says, quote, you will say it's not our decision to make, but we have made it. Now you have to make yours. The Trump Department of Justice has said it is going through millions of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, while it is now 3 weeks past deadline to turn them over to Congress. And President Trump once again threatening to withhold all federal funding from the city of Chicago in retaliation for the city's sanctuary status. The president made his remarks at the Detroit Economic Club today, and he says he'll pause the funding starting February 1st to cities like Chicago that offer protections for undocumented immigrants. Now, a federal judge recently issued a temporary restraining order after the president threatened to withhold $1 billion in funding for state child care services, and federal judges have ruled unanimously against the Trump administration's efforts in the past to keep away funding because of sanctuary status. The money is already appropriated by Congress, but Trump says he'll move forward anyway.
Starting February 1st, we're not making any payments to sanctuary cities or states having sanctuary cities because they do everything possible to protect criminals at the expense of American citizens, and it breeds fraud and crime and all of the other problems that come. So we're not making any payment to anybody that supports sanctuary cities.
Meanwhile, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has some strong statements about the Bears. He thinks they'll beat the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday. Now, Pritzker responded today as the Bears amp up their threats to leave the state for Northwest Indiana, where lawmakers there are preparing a possible tax incentive package to lure them across the border. Pritzker and Illinois lawmakers have said legislation to help the Bears build their Arlington Heights facility will not be a priority this year. Now, the Bears are looking for the ability to negotiate future property tax rates with the village, something that could save them tens of millions of dollars. Pritzker says the state is on board to help with infrastructure costs.
Look, I've always said that building a stadium is, from my perspective, about doing what's best for the taxpayers. This is a private business. We help private businesses all the time in the state, and I want to help. If it's with infrastructure, as we do with other private businesses, that's absolutely a way we could do that. But as I've said, and the Bears have heard this, that we're not going to build a stadium for the Chicago Bears.
The Bears, of course, take on the LA Rams at 5:30 this Sunday in the divisional championship for the right to go to the NFC championship. And late breaking news, the great Jim Corneliuson will be singing the national anthem. And the action on the field isn't slowing the team down on their quest to break ground somewhere on a new stadium. Yesterday, they sent out a lengthy survey to fans asking about how they felt about going to Northwest Indiana for the game, for tailgating, for post-game activities. And they asked about some potential eye-popping ticket prices as well. Allow me to explain. 2 days after this unbelievable victory at home against Green Bay, the team sent out a survey to its season ticket holders and longtime fans, basically asking them how they would feel about a stadium in Northwest Indiana. And we know they've been looking at sites in Wolf Lake, Hammond, and near the Hard Rock Casino on 8094, among potential other sites. So some of these questions: would you stay after the game and go to a mixed-use entertainment zone and spend hours there? Would you pregame and tailgate at a Northwest Indiana site parking lot? Would you be more likely to go there if they had outdoor markets or music festivals or restaurants or gyms, recreation opportunities, things like that? So trying to gauge the fan interest here. They also sent a seating bowl and potential pricing in a new stadium, wherever it goes. And some of these numbers are eye-popping. So for the nosebleeds, the tickets didn't look so bad for season tickets or personal seat licenses. Now remember, personal seat license, or PSL, is basically paying a sum for the right to purchase the season tickets. So the way they kind of frame it is that, well, you own the seat now. This is your property. And it's true, you could maybe sell that personal seat license later. So some of the cheaper prices in nosebleeds, $4,000 for personal seat licenses, but then club seats on the 50-yard line, you want to know how much those PSLs will cost? $100,000. So save up right now, Bears fans, and will this be the session that finally the Bears get something passed in Springfield? Lawmakers are back to work today in the state capitol, and the session goes until the end of May, but there's so many other things on the agenda: energy costs, a budget deficit, millionaires tax. So joining me now is Democratic Majority Leader Representative Cam Buckner from Chicago and House Republican Leader Tony McComey from Savannah downstate. Good to talk to both of you, getting back to work down there. So let's start with the topic du jour, Representative Buckner. Now that the Bears are surveying sites in Indiana, lawmakers are potentially going to come forward with a proposal pretty soon. Does that get you to the table any quicker with the Bears to try and perhaps help them with their legislation?
We've never left the table, Paris. We have been open to having conversations about what the future looks like for the Chicago Bears. We have said that we are open to having infrastructure conversations, and we want them to come to the table with a plan that works for the people of Illinois. And so, they today or yesterday put out a survey after they already threatened to move to Indiana, asking people what they thought about it. Once again, the way they've done this is just weird to me. But we're at the table. We've been at the table, and we are welcoming them back to the table.
Leader McComey, and what they want out of Springfield is this legislation that would give them the ability to negotiate their property tax rates with the village instead of pay whatever the assessed value is going to be every year. And they're saying they need this to get investor money. They want the certainty. Is that too much to ask for this team that is vowing to build the stadium all with their own money? Tony, I think you might be muted.
Oh, here we go.
There
Sorry.
you go.
It's 2026. Like I said from the beginning, a public-private partnership is the way to get this done. Certainly, I hope Republicans are also at the table with Democrats and the Chicago Bears to have these conversations. I wouldn't support a mega project bill like we saw during veto session, and basically that is because it takes away some local control, and quite honestly, it was too broad. So it would really be the devil in the details for us.
And Representative Buckner, I mean, you've called this ask from them tax breaks, for a billion-dollar corporation. What they have said repeatedly is they need this certainty to get that institutional money, that bank money, so they can start building. Is that a fair argument?
I think it's an argument or a conversation that we can have, but once again, the Bears have to be honest and forthcoming about this. Today, they're saying that they don't want money to build the actual stadium. They were not saying that a year ago. They asked us for $2 billion just about 12 months ago. They've changed their story so many times. What we do know for sure is that they have said that they cannot move forward without some kind of infusion or some kind of alignment from the legislature. And we've said we're willing to have those conversations. But the Bears should once again be honest about the fact that they want to build, and they have said, they have indicated that there's no way for them to build without being down with OPP, other people's paper. That's what they're doing. So we should have that conversation.
Representative McComey, is it going to be a big loss for Illinois? Say if Indiana comes forward with a big tax incentive plan and the Bears say, okay, you know what? We're going to pack our bags. We're going to cross the border. We're going to go to Wolf Lake or somewhere around there.
Yeah, it would be embarrassing, quite honestly, if we saw the Chicago Bears now in Indiana. And it's interesting, my friend on the other side of the aisle, it seems that oftentimes when you're talking about OPP, that we're spending people's money all of the time for priorities that are not their own. So I just hope that also the General Assembly is transparent on all of this as well.
Representative Buckner, what about you? I mean, you've been very forceful in blocking their move out of Soldier Field and making sure that there's no taxpayer money involved. But is it a bigger political loss if the Bears say, you know what, we're done with negotiations here, we're going to Indiana?
We've been very clear about this. I want the Bears to play in Chicago. I think all of us want the Bears to play in Illinois, and we've had that conversation. We've been very forthcoming about that. What also is true is that the Bears have to be able to, be honest brokers, which they have not been up until this point. Chicago is the city that made them. Illinois is the state that made them. They started 100+ years ago in Decatur. We should have a conversation about their commitment to this state. They've threatened to leave in a way that is supposed to create some leverage. I think they're doing the wrong thing for their brand. And frankly, the NFL is not trying to have a hole in their market in the Chicago area.
And we know that NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell was in town on Saturday touring all these sites with Bears leadership. Leader McComey, on to some of the other issues that you have, because, you know what, before we move on to that, Representative Buckner, the governor and lawmakers have said that any legislation for the Bears is not a priority this session. Has that changed? Is it something you could take up?
So I think these are two different questions. Just because something is not a priority does not mean we don't take it up. We do a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of bills that are going to run through this legislature this year. What the governor has said and what many of us have said is that the Bears are not number one on our list, and they're not. Tony talked about affordability, and she talked about the fact that we've got to make sure that the people at home are getting taken care of, and we need to do that as a legislature. That's on us. The Bears do not break the top 5 or 10 or 15 things that we have to do this year. That does not mean that we won't address it.
Yeah, and you do more than 15 things sometimes on the final day of session. But Leader McComey, what about the issue of costs, consumer costs? Heating bills are going way up. Energy bills going way up. They all want rate hikes again. Insurance bills are skyrocketing. What can you do legislatively to attack these problems?
Well, not continue to pass bills like what just was passed in the veto session, an $8.1 billion energy bill that doesn't do anything to generate energy. That's certainly a problem. And just, a couple days ago, you see other companies coming out with rate increases. So we have to stop. We have to stop funding things on predictions and unknowns. So we really need to be looking at an all energy process and make sure that we're not shutting down clean coal, natural gas, and we need to embrace so we can be an exporter of energy again. Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble, and people are going to be continuing to be chased out of their homes. They won't be able to afford it.
I'll pose that question to you, Representative Buckner. What can be done? What are the priorities for Democrats legislatively to start tackling these skyrocketing energy, power, insurance, what have you, costs?
Yeah, when you look at the price of energy, the price of insurance, the price of childcare, the price of rent and mortgage and groceries, we've got a lot of work to do. I agree with my friend Leader McComey on this. We've got to find ways not to just talk about affordability in the abstract way, right? But people have to be able to feel it in their pockets every single day, right? We have to make it easier for folks to live and survive in this state. And that needs to be a concerted effort. And it's something that we're going to take very seriously as we head back to Springfield.
Leader McComey, what are you looking at, do you think, in terms of a budget deficit this year?
Well, we're always looking at that. Here we are in the last 15 years, we went from a $40 billion to a $55 billion budget. When we had an opportunity, when we had an influx of federal dollars coming in, we had an opportunity to pay down some things. Instead, we started new programs and more spending. We really have to tighten the belt. There can be no more new projects, that are pet projects, pork projects. We have to stop raising our taxes. If we don't really holistically look at how we tax Illinoisans, we're never going to grow our tax base. Everybody around us is changing and improving, in my opinion, and how they're taxing Illinoisans. Nobody minds paying for a tax if they're getting a service for it. But we've just been asked too much. And now more recently, and I believe we will see a fix this year with the transit bill. I think there was some mistakes made with the downstate money being swept that was coming from the gas tax. So I think that's another thing that is very apparent to people is the cost of filling their gas tanks.
Representative Buckner, is that true? Are Democrats going to look at perhaps some fixes to that massive $1.5 billion transit bill that really helped Chicago's transit systems avoid that fiscal cliff and perhaps modernize? But are there fixes to come?
Well, first off, I'll say this. Whenever you pass generational legislation like we did, there will always be room for fixes. And we have committed to doing that and to, being embracing whatever those changes may look like. But I will also say, while Chicago was the biggest part of that bill, this bill supercharged downstate transit as well. When you look at small towns in places like Bloomington and Macomb and Carbondale, the fact that they are now able to put money into their bus system without having to tax their people more, I think is a huge win, number one. And the second thing I'll say, Paris, is our budget has grown over the last number of years, but that's because our obligation to our people have grown, right? And we got more work to do here as a state, and we should never be apologetic about putting more money in schools and roads and bridges and doing the things that people have elected us to do.
Leader McComey, you heard earlier President Trump threatening to withhold billions of dollars from Chicago. He's threatened to withhold $1 billion for state child care services. Does this most of the time the president has attempted to do this, the courts have struck him down, saying it's not constitutional. This is money already earmarked. But does that factor into budgeting?
Oh, I'm sure it will, but let's remember this is a pause, no different than other things that have come out of the Trump administration. And I don't understand why my colleagues on the other side of the aisle aren't willing to investigate and look into when you're spending so much money, it oftentimes you see waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think it's good to take a pause. If you're, really providing daycare and you're really doing these things to, provide for our vulnerable, kids around the state, then absolutely, I think there's going to be no issues there. But this is a pause. We shouldn't be gaslighting, no different than the SNAP, which is something we can look at internally. The SNAP error rate has gone up from 6% to 11% under Governor Pritzker, and that's something we can address right now ourselves through agency management.
So you're saying the error rate, that 11% benefits are going to people that are not qualified for it?
That's correct.
And in terms of child care, the Trump administration has said the reason for the pause is because of the fraud investigations in Minnesota, and they're saying it's probably going on everywhere. But do you have any hard evidence that anything like that is happening here?
No, but I was lucky. I was on the audit commission for several years here in Illinois, and repeatedly, regardless of the agency, there was always repeat findings. And everybody that was sitting there at the table being asked questions, they'd always say, well, I wasn't the director or I wasn't the manager at this time, so it's not my burden to bear. And you always saw the repeat findings. And I think that's just an excuse and something that needs to be brought to light. There certainly has been some fraud and some overpayments and things through other agencies in Illinois. You've seen that. You've probably reported on some of that as well. In the daycare, childcare, no, I have not heard of anything as of right now. But I certainly hope that the governor and the administration is going to be looking into that themselves, because all of that money should be going to the folks that need it the most.
Representative Buckner, give us the top three things that we haven't talked about tonight that are going to be on your agenda that folks should pay attention to as you go through your session.
Well, I think that once again, the main thing that we need to focus on this year is affordability. We've got to make grown-up decisions in the budget room, making sure that this budget mirrors what we need to do for the people of Illinois. It's going to be very hard to try to figure out what's going on with this presidential administration and how to maneuver through it. But the people in this state expect for state government to be a stabilizing force, and we have to find a way to do that. So affordability is number 1, 2, and 3, and we will find ways to do that. I will also say that when you look at the threats that are coming from the White House and the threats to pull back funding, whether it's a pause or it's a complete erasure of them, we've got to be able to respond to that. And honestly, it's a perfect opportunity for the Illinois GOP to do the right thing and to choose, courage over convenience when it comes to pushing back against this president.
Well, very quickly, I'll have you respond to that, Leader McComey. Courage over convenience. Have you chose convenience?
Yeah, well, and I'm glad that Cam is. I knew I'd get his fire here eventually, but this is a process that happens with every president, regardless of the politics. I think when the Democrats talk about affordability, that scares me, because I'm not really sure what that means other than to raise more revenue. I believe, and our caucus is strong on 3 things for this session, and that is fixing the road fund through the air transit bill, energy cost, and safety, the Safety Act. There's several fixes. The governor has stated that he is open to them. I know that Representative Buckner is also open to some changes and some fixes. So we have to really look about putting victims before criminals, and we can do that. There's been some mistakes made in Springfield, and we need to clean that up.
All right, so changes to the Safety Act, perhaps a subject for another day. But for now, I want to thank you both, Representative Cam Buckner and Leader Tony McComey. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And when we come back, Chicago, of course, is a city of high-rises and mid-rises. So why does one neighborhood want to prevent them from being built? Right after this. Welcome back. Residents in the North Side neighborhood of Edgewater are going to the courts to try and block the building of more high-rises and mid-rises. Now, recently, City Council approved a plan to allow for taller buildings along a 1.5-mile stretch of Broadway from Montrose up to Devon amid a housing crunch. But some of the neighbors are uttering those four famous words, "Not in my backyard." And joining us from the 6,000 block of Broadway is Patricia Sharkey, president of Edgewater Residents for Responsible Development. Patricia Sharkey, thank you for speaking with us. First of all, the zoning committee, alderpersons have approved this change in zoning, which would allow mid-rises up to, I believe, 50 stories along Broadway there, Devon up to Montrose. Tell us specifically what this would allow for.
Yeah, what it's doing is allowing developers to come into the neighborhood and build as of right with no aldermanic or community input any building up to 8 stories tall with absolutely no community input. It's designed by the Department of Planning, and they've said it quite clearly, to encourage development all up and down Broadway. Please understand that what the city has done is put in place a single uniform zoning classification that is it allows construction twice as high and 7 times as dense as the current zoning does. And this has been done with coming as a plan from downtown, brought to the community with no community input. The community has opposed it from day one. And I would take a bit of an issue with you, Paris, in your characterization as Chicago as a city of big buildings. In fact, our Chicago neighborhoods are incredibly diverse, as in Edgewater is an example of one of the most diverse and one of the most dense. We have high-rise buildings, but we also have neighborhoods that are single-family, 2-flat, 3-flat, 6-flat, that are in fact part of the character that those of us who live here love about our neighborhoods. We're communities of small businesses. Again, a part of what makes Chicago neighborhoods special. That's what Edgewater is, and that's what we're in danger of losing.
And I want to ask you, because you're at Patio Beef right now, so you're saying you're in danger without a community process of losing these little restaurants or stands like Patio Beef in favor of some mid-rise buildings.
Absolutely. The city has put out a map, indeed, of the entire stretch of Broadway from Devon to Foster, which is the portion in Edgewater, in which they've called every single parcel, 80 to 90% of the entire strip of 1.5 miles as a development opportunity. In other words, the city is trying to attract and has put a target, big developers, and they put a target on the back of businesses like the one we're standing in right now, an iconic Chicago brat house where the owners have invested their life savings, and that has been here for many years and is very beloved in this community.
But at the same time, it's not as if the city's going to use eminent domain. I mean, the developer would have to agree to sell his lot. Am I wrong? And what's the legal basis, then, you believe, that you might succeed on?
Yeah, well, I could tell you, you've got many of these businesses, small businesses, that do not own their building. They're lessees. And many of them are on leases under which the owner can give them 6 months, a year notice and essentially kick them out. And that's what we anticipate is going to be happening, and one of the reasons we filed the lawsuit. And what do we think is going to happen with the lawsuit? Well, what we've experienced is a complete rush to do a top-down upzoning to the highest level allowed under the code in our neighborhood. And we're just not going to allow that to happen. We've been fighting with the city about it for over a year now. Our alderman has not been listening to us. The mayor refused to meet with us. The Department of Planning has refused to meet with us. We represent not just a small portion of the community, but almost every block club in the community.
Patricia,
every block club.
I'm sorry, I have to break it
area.
because we are out of time. Thank you so much, Patricia Sharkey, Edgewater Residents for Responsible Development. We should mention we did reach out to the Department of Public Development. They said they don't comment on litigation. We reached out to 47th Ward Alderman Matt Martin, who represents part of this. We did not hear back. And that is it for us tonight. Thank you all for joining us. We're back tomorrow night. Take care.